Hi, good evening. To everyone joining us from around the globe, I'm your host, Karishma Kumar Singh, and I want to extend a huge, warm welcome to this essential webinar on cybersecurity. In today's digital world, the threat landscape is evolving faster than ever. So, as a promotional teaser or the post rightfully put, hackers don't wait, so why should you? For the next hour, we are going to dive into some real-world cyber cases and learn actionable strategies to defend against today's biggest digital threats and a basic foundational workshop on cybersecurity. Whether you're a business owner, an IT professional, a student, or just someone who is concerned about digital safety or cybersecurity in general, your first step into a more secure world starts right here in this webinar. So we'll show you how to stay one step ahead of this world, of this cyber world. But first, let's meet the expert who will be leading us on this critical journey throughout this hour. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Mr. Roshan Amarasinghe. Mr. Roshan is truly a veteran in the field, bringing over 15 years of experience across cybersecurity, from strategic planning, entrepreneurship. He currently functions as the director of ISEC Forte Technologies, heading their cybersecurity efforts for Sri Lanka. I'm right, yeah, Mr. Roshan Amarasinghe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the
Also,
introduction. Uh,
I have more to tell about you. This is not
of course,
just a
go
small
for it, go for it.
small profile of his. It's because he's also currently reading for his doctorate. His doctorate is in management, and he holds two master degrees in strategic marketing and business administration, alongside his foundational degree in electrical and electronic engineering. His extensive knowledge is also further highlighted in his 8 publications in diverse areas, from mechatronics for defense and medical applications to cyber warfare, diplomacy, and economic development. With Mr. Roshan's deep expertise, we are in the best hands today, I can assure you, to do this cybersecurity workshop to understand how to fortify our digital lives. So, Mr. Roshan Amarasinghe, thank you for being here, and the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Harsh, for having me. Let me just share my screen, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me if it changes. We always have tech problems last minute. Hopefully that won't be an issue. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Mr.
Yes, sir, you can see.
Okay, great. All right. So we are going to go into the realities of cybersecurity. This is a deep dive in the sense there will be some reflections on previous case studies. There'll be some reflections on some new case studies, and there will be a general chat back and forth into 3 components. The first, I'm going to talk about national defense, security, and a little bit about what has been done here. The second, will be touching on to corporate, very lightly mentioning what exactly corporates can do in terms of their engagement. And the third will give you a little bit of information regarding how you can secure yourself as individuals when using your computers, your various digital devices, and then we'll have a back and forth chat between that. There are 2 breaks. The first break will be after the national section and the corporate section, so that if there are any questions, we can have a quick chat there. And then finally, we can have a discussion around the cyber hacking and the other areas that I touch on at the end. Yeah, hold on. Right, okay. Yeah, okay, that works. So we're going to move into the first section, which is the threat landscape. Now, we are all familiar about the traditional war that we fought in Sri Lanka that lasted over 30 years and that ended in 2009. Now, the cyber landscape is divided into different areas. I'll touch on each separately. We are all familiar with military operations. Military operations has been where traditionally, let's say party A or country A invades the closest, maybe the closest geography next door, and they decide to take it over. Non-military ops is where espionage and other areas kick in as well. Now, there are 2 major areas in terms of cybersecurity, that is cyber warfare and cyber terrorism. This is at a national perspective. Now, cyber warfare is where 2 state actors, and what do I mean by state actors? I mean, it could be a country, it could be a government, it could be military forces, and they would be attacking or they would be engaging with country B. So it's all at national level in terms of state actors. Cyber terrorism is a different perspective. Now, cyber terrorism comes up when you look at maybe groups, organizations that do not work at a national level. We call them non-state actors. And those non-state actors engage with different areas in terms of crippling maybe groups, crippling private limited organizations, targeting certain government departments, but it's all on a private perspective. Now, when it comes to key considerations, we are all familiar with LTTE, but how many of you have been following up to the point of the war concluding in 2009? Have you all followed the cyber activities that the LTTE had done during that time? A simple yes or no would be fine if a few in the audience could answer that. That is the LTTE activities in terms of cyberspace. Are you familiar with that by any chance?
No.
No. All right. Okay. So in terms of cyberspace, LTTE has been attacking various government departments. They have been taking on certain engagements targeting critical services, but that has always been haphazardly. And the reason behind that, we will get into a little bit later on. The final key consideration is information and propaganda management. Now, in terms of information and propaganda management, I'll give you a very simple example. You wake up in the morning, you log on to your favorite social media. Let's say it's Facebook for the older generation, such as myself, or maybe Instagram for the younger kids out there. And you see this article or you see this post about some outrageous thing that happened in Colombo. Maybe it's something related to some break-in. It could be related to someone saying something about something. How many of us actually go through this information, vet it, and reshare it? If it matches our principles, or this is general psychology. I mean, cyber psychology is something that connects on to military and cybersecurity as well. When you see something and it resonates with you, it's very rare that you'll actually take the time to check whether this is real or whether this is fake. That's why we get reshare, and we always say that misinformation or disinformation travels 10 times as fast as actual information. And these are the key considerations when you look at cybersecurity, warfare, and terrorism at a national level. So on the right side of the screen, you can see certain things like propaganda attacks, espionage, economic disruption. These are all various things that can be done at a national level. Now, cybersecurity policy dilemma, what that does mean. Look at cyber warfare and look at cyber terrorism. Now, I just explained that cyber warfare is in terms of government and state actors, and cyber terrorism is groups of private individuals targeting certain infrastructure, people, or it could even be financial gain. And now, information or misinformation or information warfare is connected to all three of these. Why all three are connected is for one simple reason. While national or cyber warfare attacks target critical infrastructure, cyber terrorism can be in the form of disrupting daily activities. Now, for an example, if we talk about clickbait on the internet, we talk about various Facebook and Instagram stories going across that we look at. All three of these are connected in the form of a holistic attack or approach towards a certain engagement. Now, I'll use my first case study. Some of these case studies are relatively old, but that's because they're quite interesting. Now, the Ukraine-Russia war has been ongoing. I've made it very simple for you. This is a slide that is available on the internet. If you see on the left side, you have Russia that is signified in orange, and then you have Ukraine signified in blue. If you look at some of these major attacks, we won't take everything one by one, but we'll look at one or two of these just for an idea. To 2014. Now, there was a voting attack. And what was this vote counting attack? The entire system was digitized in the Ukraine. All you had to do was you had to log in, you had to do your vote. It was tallied on a digitized platform. And then you would have the winner based on the popular vote count. Just prior to these elections, where it was going on, they suddenly realized that their systems had been attacked. Now, all of this had been wiped out. All of this information had been rigged, and they had to go back to a manual voting system. Now, that is one perspective of a political cyber warfare based attack where one state actor decided to attack another state. If you take another example, that is basically, let's say, the Belarus railway attack. Again, they attack critical infrastructure. So if you notice when it comes to cyber warfare, which is a state to state engagement primarily, they always target what? Political targets. They look at infrastructure. They look at critical services. What do we mean by critical services? Power, gas, energy. Those are all the targets that you would see organizations or government actors attacking. Now, as we move on in these slides, you start to realize that these lines have been blurred over the last 10 years. you'll see that certain examples that I give you in terms of cyber warfare, which is at a national level, sort of blurs into cyber terrorism, which is more of a private perspective or group perspective or private funding. So we'll get back into that shortly. So the Ukraine-Russia war has been very interesting because over the years, rather than having to hurl bombs or shoot missiles out at that, they can actually target key economic targets or key political targets or government targets, and they can basically cripple the same system. So I'll get into that later on, but this is one of those examples. Now the next one. This is a beautiful example. This is possibly one of the first clear examples of attacks in terms of cyber warfare. Now, this is way back in the day. It's quite a few years ago. But the primary thing was that when it came to Iran, Iran was looking at increasing their nuclear enrichment program because Iran wanted to focus on nuclear power. Now, there was a sabotage, and I'll explain how this works. The enrichment program, where they enrich, let's say, nuclear material, is by centrifuges that spin at a certain level. Now, these centrifuges are basically connected cylinders, and they spin at a certain level to enrich this raw material. Looking at the case study, it started very, they still don't know how it was brought in. This is actually something where they say it could have happened this way, but they mentioned that a malicious computer worm probably came through a computer system. It could have been a computer, it could have been a software, because this entire compound, the physical compound, was away from internet connections. Sorry, I think there's a bit of background sound on this. All right, so I'll continue though. It was basically not connected to any internet systems. It was a standalone system away from any internet or open lines. The question that arose was, how did they bring this in? So there are only two ways that people can fathom. One is through a hardware that they brought into the compound, or number two, it could have been some sort of software update that came in. Now, what the virus did was it was controlled remotely. It was controlled from Denmark, Malaysia, you can say any other place, because these are all certain theories that have been put into this. But what it did was they gained access to this system through that remote injection. And after that, unfortunately, they couldn't control this virus or this creation that they had made, and it attacked systems around the world. Now, what Stuxnet did was it spread through that system and it remained dormant. So what did it do? It started going through the systems, all the interconnected systems within that compound, and it started gathering information as to how all of this worked. And the program was particularly targeted at the control software, the Siemens control software that was used to control these centrifuges. Thereafter, in the next phase, what they did was the worm started attacking the software and started making all of these, the physical enrichment program. So I explained to you earlier how the enrichment program works is that you have centrifuges. These centrifuges spin at a certain speed, and that is what enriches the various types of nuclear ingredients that they have. What this virus did was it started making these centrifuges spin really fast or spin really slow. And the end result was that most of these centrifuges, one, were not efficient. Two, they started getting damaged. So if you notice in the bottom half of this screen, it starts mentioning that between February 1st of 2009 and 2010 up to May, the amount of damage that was caused in the system. Now, these numbers might seem very small to you, but the bottom line is a country's entire nuclear agenda, their journey in nuclear power, was affected by this particular virus. So that is a very interesting case study, because this case study can be replicated. And you've seen a lot of attacks on private organizations where they have replicated the same attack, but they've used the same platform in terms of different viruses and they've attacked it. So now I would say the last 6 to 7 years of the viruses and the various attacks that you see are all inspired by this kind of attack at a government and private level. Now, the USA, we always talk about the USA as being the key leader, I would say, in terms of cybersecurity. And this is where I draw in. If you look at a superpower in terms of know-how, in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of threat analysis, US is a benchmark across the world. But look at this data breaches. Now, these data breaches are from 2024 alone. If you look at some of this, I'll pick a few examples for you to understand. Discord. Now, Discord is a massive service. They had records that were lost close to 4 billion plus. Now look at those records. Number one. Then in terms of the rest, you can look at Comcast Cable. Comcast Cable is, of course, a famous entertainment and cabling organization, and also VF Corporation. So you can see that all of these sectors have been attacked. The cybersecurity hackers, attackers, they don't distinguish between small targets and large targets. They only distinguish between attackable targets and non-attackable targets. So you might be sitting at home thinking, okay, I'm a CEO of XYZ organization. It's not a very big company. So why would I be attacked? But the reality is, you could be attacked, your private information could be stolen, and it could just be held at ransom just because you have the capability of paying $50, paying $100. Now, I use this case study, or at least I use this personal case study of one of my friends. She reached out to me a few weeks ago, and a hacker had attacked all of her social media accounts. And she asked me, what should I do? I said, look, if a hacker has already gotten in touch with you, have a conversation, but don't pay them because this payment will go throughout your life. And what happened? The hacker asked for just $100 to give back the passwords. Then she said she doesn't want the passwords back. Then he negotiated down to $50. So while these amounts look very small to you, the reality is that when it comes to cybersecurity and attacks, it all depends on what type of attack is attacking you, number one, and two, what is their target or their agenda for this attack. So if you look at the US, coming back to this example, you can see that the critical services that have been attacked is IT services and software. Now, you would assume that the IT sector would be the most secure from all the various industries, but the reality is no. Those are the heavily hit areas: IT security, healthcare, retail. Any business that is global or large scale can be attacked because the exploitable holes are far higher. Now, moving on to a multi-layered approach. Now, what do we mean by multi-layered approach? That basically means the various sections that we need to look at. Sri Lanka is under threat in three different areas. Now, people say that the war has ended. I always say that while the physical war has ended, the kinetic war has ended, we are at war at the moment. We are at war in terms of being attacked by our neighbors who want to sort of cause problems or at least engage in terms of that. Now, LTT has a force, if I recall, it was the Elam Cyber Force. They've got a specific name for it. Their target is to continuously attack government and non-government services in Sri Lanka and ensure that there is some sort of mess up done or some sort of upset is done in terms of daily operations. Now, in cyber warfare, as I mentioned, they can attack key establishments, that is government establishments, and they can also attack power and critical infrastructure and military targets. So when I mean military targets, it doesn't have to be the high-end targets. It can be any military establishment that is contributing towards our national security agenda. And once there's a breach in one area, it means that other areas is exploitable if they are interconnected. Now, in cyber terrorism, attacks on banking, I can personally tell you, without naming names, the banking services are heavily attacked on a yearly basis. Some are exploited, some are not. You can see siphoning of various small amounts of. You can see of attacks on their critical systems. You can see server compromises, remote working compromises. This goes across the border because cyber terrorism is not like state actors. It can be small operations as well as large operations. The final one is information warfare. Now we spoke about information warfare. What is the easiest way? I'll put it to the audience as well. Maybe you can just answer in a sentence or two. If you want to promote yourself, okay? Let's say that you are sitting at home, you'd like to enter an industry, but it's going to take you 10 years of experience. What would be the fastest way to promote yourself or make yourself known without doing the work? Okay, I'll take that silence as people thinking. So I'll give you an answer to that as well. The answer is very simple. What you would do is you would create an image on social media, and thereafter you would propagate that information out. So for an example, you could be somebody starting out just in banking and finance. You could be somebody starting out just in consultancy. But the image that you portray on social media and all of the various captions, everything that you do, everyone uses ChatGPT. I'm proud to say that I have not used ChatGPT in terms of my work in my life up to now. I mean, I've seen ChatGPT pop up saying that you can use it, but I don't use it a lot for one simple reason. The ability to think and critical problem solving goes out of the window with time. It makes your life simpler. You might sound far smarter than you would on normal basis, but the reality is that that is where the attacks start. So social media and media manipulation is one way that information warfare can come about. And the sentiment can be changed to strategic influence. What does that mean? We see politics in Sri Lanka. We see a lot of people sharing. Now, when they share various posts, and I won't touch on this deeply because I know politics is a very touchy subject in Sri Lanka, but the reality is, do you actually go through all of that information? Do you vet it? Or if it matches your biases or it matches what you'd like to do you reshare it? So this is how information warfare works. Imagine targeting at national level. You want to attack Sri Lanka as a country. What would you do? You would start hitting all the negative news out there in the various areas and you would start expanding on it. So information warfare is a threat to Sri Lanka and it's multi-tiered because it's connected. At the start, you remember the Venn diagram that I showed you earlier, the connection. Cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, and information warfare are all interrelated and interconnected. So recommendations. This is something that we brought up very recently at a security conference as well, just a couple of months ago. One is to establish a cyber warfare division. Now we have, if the some of the listeners or at least some of the connected audience is aware of how the National Cybersecurity Front works in Sri Lanka. We have different military cyber commands, and they are doing a fantastic job. But we don't have an integrated cyber warfare division where we would use civilian resources as well as government and military resources under one umbrella. So that could be one area that we can look at. Second is capacity building. Now, capacity building in the sense, if I ask you, how many of your friends left the country last year? You might say maybe about 5 years ago, you might say one of my friends migrated, two of my friends, but the number that migrated over the last 2 years is far more significant than the last decade. And this is where capacity building is important because there is no point in building skills just to leave the country. And that is what a lot of people have. See, yeah, you don't hold them accountable or there's nothing wrong with that because obviously everyone is looking at bettering their lives. But the reality is that if we are building a national cybersecurity agenda, we have to build our capacity as well. Introduction of a national forensic lab. Now, there was very recently, there was a launch of a cybersecurity operation by SLCERT, and that was under the government as well. So the National Forensics Lab could be the next move, and there are already some talks about a basic lab coming up. That is to pinpoint when these attacks happen, where it happened, how it happened, who executed it, how can we stop it in the future so that we ensure that our national security is strengthened year on year, incident on incident. No one's trying to stop incidents here, but what I'm trying to say is eventually you are going to have to ensure that you are safe. Now, regional security alliance establishment. All state actors and all governments, they work in terms of sharing information. A regional security alliance is where we have, let's say, for example, Singapore. Singapore signs a regional accord with Sri Lanka, India, and a few other countries. What they would do is they would start sharing regional threats and regional security threats in terms of cybersecurity with these various organizations and countries. So then what would happen is rather than operating, now we always say when you're working in an organization, a team is stronger than an individual. If a team moves together in one direction, it's far stronger than an individual working by themselves. This is the same policy that we're applying here. We will have different countries signing and working together to ensure that the national security of each country is strengthened. And finally, a cyber warfare doctrine. Now, what is a cyber warfare doctrine? That is where, if Sri Lanka goes to war, and when I mean goes to war, if a division is attacked, if the military is attacked, if critical services are attacked, we need to have a fixed cyber warfare doctrine where we can look at this and we can have a protocol, call it a manual or an insurance policy. Let's say if something goes wrong with some device that you bought, what would you first do? You would start reading through the manual, thinking, okay, I did this, I didn't do this, I did this. This is a similar concept where you have a cyber warfare doctrine. It gives you a step-by-step protocol to A, ensure that any attacked environment is isolated. B, we have a fixed protocol saying these are the initial steps that we would have to do to protect our environment. And that would also be a response mechanism where if we can integrate all of these various suggestions together, we would actually be able to go on the offensive rather than the defensive eventually. As Karishma mentioned when we started this, hackers don't sleep. The other thing is hackers don't play by the rules. Now, you can't go and do the same thing that a hacker does because you would be fined or you would be held legally liable. Hackers don't work within the legal realm, they work within that gray area. And the gray area is where I would say legally, if you have departments and divisions, they are already on the back foot because they can't do half the things that the hackers are allowed to do by their own principles. So moving on to some of these, we're looking at, I told you we've broken this down into three. So the next one is managing cyber risk at a corporate level. Now we spoke about national level. Now we're going to transition a little bit into our corporate level. There are three major problems in the corporate. Number one is that I always say cybersecurity is like an insurance policy. And what do I mean by insurance policy? What happens with an insurance policy? You buy an insurance policy today. When you buy an insurance policy, you keep thinking year on year, why am I spending 100,000 rupees, 200,000 rupees, 300,000 rupees? I'm not getting anything from this. But the day that you get hospitalized, and then you get a bill of maybe a ton, and you know how bills work in Sri Lanka, let's say we get about a 1.5 million bill, that's when you realize the importance of this investment that you have done year on year. Cybersecurity is the same thing. If your cybersecurity is running well, you will not have any problems. So then the question is, as at a corporate level, how do I go and justify to my board of directors, my finance department, my various departments that this is required for me, right? So this is the back and forth that we see in terms of cybersecurity in Sri Lanka, because while everyone would love to have all of these security solutions, how do we fund it? Why are we funding it? These are the questions that are asked at many board levels, not all, but the major cybersecurity risks in corporates can be managed in different areas. So I'll pick three or four areas here. One is you understand the essential role of board members in managing cyber risk. What does that mean? You need to have an IT savvy member on the board so that they can communicate the risks to corporate brand, corporate entity, security data to the rest of the board. And why do I start at board level? Because while we have a tiered system, a hierarchical system in corporates, the end line, the budgets, the approvers, everything comes from the board level downwards. This is how it works. So two, you have to prioritize cyber risk as a strategic business risk. So a lot of students who are logged in on this program, and I'm sure a lot of employees who are working in different companies, they know that they need to prioritize various cyber risks and figure out how to put a monetary value to it. The third is conduct a thorough cyber readiness assessment. It could be a small organization, it could be a large organization. The first question that you should ask yourself is, if I'm attacked tomorrow, am I ready to protect myself? That is how you conduct a thorough cyber readiness assessment. When you start attacking or at least testing your own systems, you know where you stand. Leverage zero trust. Simple question to the audience. I'd like someone to answer. Has anyone heard of zero trust architecture? Zero trust architecture. Anyone in the audience? Okay. So I'll take that
Sorry,
silent.
I'm not
Okay.
aware. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. So no worries. So zero trust architecture is where, let's say, if you enter a job, or let's take the example at hand, you are the head of IT in the organization. Zero trust architecture is where you assume that no one can be trusted. And by no one, I mean no system can be trusted, no individual coming from outside can be trusted, no one inside can be trusted, your employees can't be trusted. And this might sound like a very negative principle, but the reasoning behind it is that when you have a zero trust principle or approach in terms of your cybersecurity architecture, you start isolating and micromanaging all the various threats and points that could attack your system. So, for an example, let's say that I'm coming in and logging to the system here. That's at the Columbia at the campus here. I come in here and I log in. Now, in the zero trust principle, I will be given the minimum credentials, the bare minimum accessors to enter their system. In a normal system, I would have relatively free access. Once I plug in the port, I generally have access to whatever is available that I can sort of reach through. So in the zero trust method, we start applying various protocols and security into each segment and area. We start breaking it down into smaller segments to ensure that if anyone comes from outside or if anyone is accessing data from inside, it is segmented to ensure that if a breach happens, that breach is minimized to that bare minimum vertical. That is what zero trust means in a nutshell. Now, the next is address non-technology mindsets. Now, I'm a part of this, though I'm in cybersecurity. Now I'm close to 40. And you have a lot of Gen Zers moving in there who are very savvy with technology. And there's a lot that we can learn from each other as well. I always say that now you have the Gen Zs who are very fast on social media, very fast on the various points. And you have the millennials who come with the wealth of knowledge that the other generations don't possess. And you also have the older generations who are also giving a lot into terms of strategy, engagement, and things like that. So the non-technology mindset has to change, where while let's say the Gen Zers are tech savvy, we can't guarantee that they're cybersecurity savvy. So this is where you bridge the gap and you make sure that all of these various areas are covered. And you have to understand the challenge between operations and cybersecurity. Now, I walk in here and I go, look, I got all of this cybersecurity put in. Everything has to be approved. You have to send it in. Now, does that not increase the red tape in an organization? And when you increase red tape in any organization, you also reduce efficiency because the speed from idea to execution increases heavily. Reduces heavily. So then, if something takes 1 day, suddenly it takes 6 days to do something. And this is where you have to find that fine balance between managing cybersecurity risks and ensuring that operations run smoothly. So this was corporate risk in a nutshell. And to bring it a bit further, if you are looking at engaging or increasing cybersecurity in your workplace, number one, explore your digital skills. That means in your organization or your team, what are their core competencies in terms of security, IT, and technology? Next, you analyze the threat and risk. If you're in a very highly geared sector, let's say that you're in the military sector, or let's say that you're in the defense sector, those sectors are heavy pressure sectors. Or you could be under retail or agriculture. Now, people might think agriculture is not, I mean, it's very important to the country, but in terms of cybersecurity, no. What if I start attacking all of your systems, stealing all of your yields, changing your demand planning, changing your yield information, your entire planning goes for a six. So in this dynamic security approach, you have to understand where your threats lie. You have to develop a threat response. Like I told you, the cybersecurity doctrine, you can inculcate that by having your own procedures and policies in an organization. Next, you integrate security and resilience, you enhance readiness, and finally, the most important thing, you can have brilliant cybersecurity policies, you can have all the money in the world to implement these policies, but if you do not have the buy-in of the various stakeholders, internal and external, your cybersecurity deployment will fail. Why? Because if they don't understand what you're doing, if they're doing it begrudgingly, where they're saying this is not required, you cannot ensure that everyone toes the same line. Because the biggest risk to cybersecurity is not anything else, it's that employee sitting at home, clicking a PDF file by accident, being sent by a spoof email address, and and basically compromising the entire system because he or she has access to your critical systems remotely. That is it in a nutshell. Now, we're stopping here at section one. Section one has covered the corporate agenda. It has covered the national agenda. I've given you a very few examples. And I'll stop it here because the next movement that we're going to go into is a bit of AI integrated with security in terms of hacking and other protocols. Are there any questions up to now?
Yes, I have a question related to national defense.
Yes.
I'm Lasit. I'm also a retired colonel in the army.
Right.
As well, I was the person who wrote the army doctrinal about 54 army doctrinal publication within 4 years. But still, there's a big lapse in the form of overarching defense doctrine in Sri Lanka. We don't have a defense doctrine. I mean, official defense doctrine, as well kind of a joint doctrine for the military tri-forces. In our doctrinal publications, the cyber security part comes under information warfare, which covers around more than 6 to 7 areas, including cyber security. So then even the psychological operations falls under this category. I mean, information warfare with cyber security as well. So now there's a big problem because we do certain things in our levels within the Army, Navy, Air Force, and other security departments. But still, there's no connectivity in these activities. So we need to ensure this connectivity. This is a kind of a comment that I'm making, rather than a question. So we have a big issue there. In fact, we tried to have some kind of a defense doctrine in 2019 as well. I was a member in 2022. We had our land force defense, review. Air Force had their own, Navy had their own. Then cyber came into play in all these discussions. But still, we cannot coordinate things. We need to have national guidance. I mean. Guidance from the top. So there's a huge gap. So what you say, probably cannot be. You were talking about some establishing some infrastructure and certain systems,
Correct.
including certain, yeah. So that should come from the top. I feel.
Agreed.
So yes, if that can be established at the top, then this would be much easier to execute.
Of course, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So to start off, sir, thank you so much for your service to the country as well. I mean, I always start there because I work with the KDU and a few of the departments there. And it's always good to have questions from the military personnel because they have been at the forefront of the country in terms of the war and, as you mentioned, the cybersecurity warfare as well. So I completely agree with what you're saying. It's something that is mixed and matched. So as you mentioned, there has to be an understanding and buy-in at the top because this is not a bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach could be where the various documentation, everything can be created. As you mentioned, it was done previously as well. But the reality of the situation, which I think you hit the nail on the head, is that while all of this exists, the top or the decision makers or the government establishments that actually dictate all of this has to understand the value of it. Now, I know for a fact that all of the various military, the tri-forces, they have their own departments and all of that, and there is some engagement between them. But the reality of the situation is, as you mentioned correctly, while we can have all the documents, the policies, the procedures, and the cyber doctrine in place, without the buy-in and the push of the decision makers above at national level, the rest falls into oblivion. So everything can be proposed, everything, and I've seen this happen over and over again. I mean, I've been in this industry for I think about 15 years or so, and I've seen this happen where a beautiful push comes across, everything is done. We see a few back and forth communications, and then it dies down eventually. So all the documentations are in place, but one, they're not updated. Two, the changing threat landscape is not taken into consideration because theoretically there should be revisions to this document every month. That's the speed that the threat landscape is changing at. So thank you so much for your comment. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. There has to be a buy-in at the top, and that is where the national agenda pushes as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Also, Mr.
Thank you.
Prashant, there's another question for you
All
from
right, good.
Ishika in the messages. For a corporation and customer point of view, is there cybersecurity related threats for a corporation?
For a corporation, okay. So sorry, who was asking the question? Nishika, is it?
Udeshika.
Udeshika, so sorry, so sorry. So Udeshika, yes, there are, because at a corporate level, I'll explain to you. Like, let's forget about what I'm doing today. Let's say that I'm a hacker. Where am I going to earn my money from? My money is going to be earned from three places. Number one, if I can access your critical data, and it's worth money, by the way. If I can get your ID number, if I can get your address, your credit card details, those are all worth money. Now, I'll explain very simply. Does your banks not have all of this information? Forget about anything else. Every bank that you bank with has all of your critical information. What if they're not secure? If you're working at an insurance company, you're working at a retail company, you could be even working at a fast food grocery market. The fact is, it's a large scale market. Now, you take major brands in Sri Lanka, there is so much of data that is valuable because this is a data game. It's no longer anything like physically stealing something and selling it. This is all a data game. Corporations have high amounts of data. They have access to bank accounts all over the place. They have credit card information. All of that is worth something. So there are a lot of risks. Number one, there are internal risks to critical servers in corporations. Two, all of the remote workers, they are at risk as well because some of them are very high-end employees with access to information. And I'll give you a personal example. So about long time back, this is about 12 years ago, I wanted to get an insurance policy for my company. It was a very small organization that we had set up, but we did very well for 3 or 4 years. So I sent an email to this lady, very, very nice person, gave all of us the information. And unfortunately, I'm not going to name the company because I'm sure half of you all work with these people. They also sent me the entire list of customers attached as an Excel sheet by accident. So now we are talking about hackers. The risk of human error is as heavy as a hacker attacking you. So in a matter of 2 clicks, I think I had at least about, on my estimate at that point, 3.5 million rupees worth of data on my estimate. Now, what did I do? I obviously I didn't sell it, but I sent an email back to her, and there was no acknowledgement of the breach. She just said, "Thank you, sir. Get back to me on the policy." So this is what happens here. If I was somebody else, I'll just go to the competitor. I'll say, "Here, this is the entire list. This is the renewal information, everything. You give me 5 million, 3.5 million, we're sorted." So the reality is the corporates have so much of data with them that this risk exists. It is a real risk, and corporates are always under fire due to it. I hope that answers your question in a nutshell. Are there any other questions, or shall I move forward?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, great. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to speed up a bit because I usually try and work on time as much as possible. So, what about AI? Now, we've all heard about AI. We hear the fear, the real fear that AI is going to steal our jobs. We're not going to have a job in the future. What are we going to do? That is true up to a certain point because a lot of the tasks that we would say were repetitive, data entry, things like that, these can be automated. But can AI replace a human being's ability to think, no matter how integrated it is, no matter how strong it is? I personally don't believe it, but others would argue. So, what is AI exactly? There are four various components. One is machine learning. They use sample data that you feed in to figure out exactly what this entire system is about. It's like us learning as children. Number two, neural networks. So, computer systems are designed to mimic the brain. The same type of activities, neurons firing, information processing, new information coming in, same way. Natural language processing is the ability to read and understand speeches as well as other information so that the AI platform can understand what's going on. And robotics, finally, which is an area that I love personally because my research has been on the military grade. I mean, if everybody has watched Iron Man, there are real Iron Man suits out now. You know, the American Defense Forces, they are really investing heavily on it. In about 5 years, I feel that you might see real live Iron Men loaded with basic to middle range new weaponry going into the warfield. So robotics is the fourth component of this. Now, everyone knows what this is. I'm not going to ask you what it is, but this is the reality of the future. We saw this about 20, 30, 30, 35 years ago. I always forget my age, 35, 40 years ago. And we realized that this is too far-fetched. The reality is you have robots now being built for domestic use at home to help people to do your daily tasks. This is the reality. So it's not far-fetched. Now, moving on into AI and how this works, and I'll explain how this integrates into the rest of it, is the various ways that the inputs work. Now, you look at three major areas. That is what? Machine learning, deep learning, expert systems. Now, the learning patterns start where AI or the platform goes into deep learning. They start predicting the various things that could happen. And there's also computing, a cognitive computing sector where they understand what's going on. Now, with deep learning, one, speech recognition, language process. All of this starts happening at a platform where once they've ingested and understood and learned the patterns, they can start making predictions and finally performing tasks. Now, this is the scary part for most of us, especially those in their 40s, late 30s and 50s. They will start wondering, okay, now I took 20 years to learn my skill set. There are certain skills that you can't replace. But there are certain skill sets you can. Now, let's say that I announce that I'm a strategist. It took me 20 years of learning to get this. AI can be a strategist in 5 days, depending on the information that you ingest. You inject into them and they ingest. So the reality is, what a human took 20, 25 years for, AI might be able to do better predictions, better analysis, better strategies in a matter of 5 to 10 days, depending on how fast they learn. Now, this is the scary side of AI. But it's only scary for the employee side. For organizations who are looking at efficiency, this is great. Now, this is something that you can read up on. This was done by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and just look at it, where they started testing the brain's response for those who had used ChatGPT and other AI platforms versus those who haven't. And forget about all of this. I'll explain the base principle behind it. How do we learn as children? As children, what our parents did was they put us out there and we realized that these were the risks that happen. And little by little, through failures, through wrong choices, we started learning what is real and what is not real. And that built a foundation for us to grow as individuals. Now, here, when you bypass that process and you start using ChatGPT for a simple email, it might not be a fancy email, but to be honest, if somebody is inviting for me for lunch, I would rather have an email saying, please come out for lunch, versus I would like your kind attendance at XYZ location and about 5 sentences with that. That is what happens with ChatGPT. The reality is that when you start using ChatGPT to bypass certain processes in your day, yes, it'll make you more efficient. But the question is it making you more intelligent? What are you doing with that free time? So that's a question that MIT raised when they did this study to see brain activity and the responses that come in when you compare ChatGPT users versus less AI using individuals. So when you look at AI for cybersecurity, we're going back into cybersecurity now. We just touched on that for a second. The benefits of automating AI in cybersecurity is one is ongoing learning. If you have a team of 15 cybersecurity professionals, they will take certain amount of years to learn expertise. ChatGPT, AI platforms by itself can look and learn on the go. They can discover unknown threats that we might take about a year to exploit and find out. It can be done faster. We deal with vast data volumes. This is no longer the 1990s where you had some forms, you fill it in, and that was it. This entire platform has changed. You can improve your vulnerability scorecard where you know that these are my threats to the organization or to, my national defense or whatever it is, and that can be fixed. You can enhance overall engagement and finally, better detection and response. Your system, your protocol, what you do in life is only as good as how you can respond and how you can fix a problem. Now, that is how AI helps. Now, we'll go back to a traditional hacker. I'm a hacker now. I'm no longer lecturing you all. What would I do if I want to attack Sudarshan? Sudarshan. What would I do if I want to attack Sudarshan? What I would do is number one, I would do a reconnaissance attack. I would first find out what does he do, what goes on in his life, uh, who is he, what information is available, and then after that I could use different mediums. It could be an SMS, it could be a WhatsApp attachment, it could be anything, an executable file. And let's say when Sudarshan opens this, then it executes the malware. The malware steals his information from his laptop, from his phone. If you're lucky, it'll just steal it on the go. But most places, what happens is it remains dormant and it keeps collecting all of your chats, so all of your private information, your data, those conversations that none of us want out. All of those things go out based on this, and finally, the malware is sent and you are held at ransom. Now, a social engineering attack can happen to us, any of us, at any point of time if you're not smart enough. What happens is there are four components to it. One is the research. The attack, as I mentioned earlier, gathers all the information, all the areas that are available about your hobbies, what you like. Let's say you're very proud about your fishing and you put up a picture of a big fish. Now he knows that you love fishing. He has new information that's available on the internet. The second is the hook. The hook is where the attacker figures out, okay, now I've gathered X, Y, Z information about this individual. How am I going to reach out to him? How am I going to connect to him? And how am I going to make sure that he engages and connects with me? The next part is the play. The attacker manipulates the target and then they start revealing information. I got this call once from a famous bank saying, I'm calling from bank XYZ. Can you give your NIC? I was like, no. And then they were like, why? I was like, because you're calling from a number that is listed as, a normal landline number. And then the funny part is, it turned out to actually be that bank. But they themselves don't know how to secure their own environments because when you see an unknown number, you're not going to trust it. So here is where they start getting you to trust them and giving that information. The final point is exit. Now the attacker has all of that valuable information that he needs. All he has to do now is execute. So the greatest lie in history, back in the day, all the salespeople, I studied engineering, I practiced engineering. From engineering, I moved into cybersecurity, into pre-sales, and I also did some sales. I'm into sales as well. So it's a mix and match environment. We always had this example when you go for any meeting where they say, sell me this pen. Now, what is the answer? It's AI powered. Everything that is AI powered is the way to go. So, phishing with AI. Now, this we spoke about traditional attacks. These are other attacks. One is phishing with AI. It's very easy because AI can process large amounts of data. It's very simple to gather all of that information on the go. Second is AI-driven ransomware. Ransomware attacks back in the day was only as good as the programmer who wrote it. Now, what happens is because AI is on point, they can actually read the information and really optimize their attack. Deep fake social engineering. This is really scary stuff. Let's say that I'm sure some of the people here have loved ones at home. You're at home and you get a video call from whoever it is, and it's them on video. What they say is, I'm really sorry, I'm stuck here. Can you transfer some money to this bank account? It's my friend's bank account. You will always transfer it. Why? Because you can see the person. But now AI has gone to such a level where they can fake video connections as well. They can actually imprint or implant the face onto the person calling so that it's no longer voice modulation where you get a deep voice saying hello. Not that. Now you have faces and videos that can actually fool you further. And how do we save ourselves from something like that? It's very difficult, right? That's the reality of AI. Now, a social engineering attack, the same way. One, the AI module will scrape the internet, find everything, your favorite posts, your night out, having a small one with a friend, out celebrating, all of those things. They will pick all the information available on the internet and they will build a model. That model is your profile. Next, they will optimize or they will actually figure out a way where they can make sure that you will respond to these messages. How do we do that? By ensuring that you see this and say, okay, this is something that I like, I'm going to respond to it. The fourth is delivery and engagement, be it email, be it WhatsApp, be it any sort of platform where you share information. They send you the payload. Payload is where when you click on it, it executes and that malware or the information is stolen. The final one, that's what I mentioned, payload execution, is where the actual script integrates. And I hate to say this, it's really scary. Even if you're using videos and things like that, they could be recording you real time without putting anything on. So we're on to the final slide of the lot. You can see this. I love using memes here and there because it doesn't have to be serious all the time. One, you have so much of accumulated information. We've been living, thousands and thousands of years, and then ChatGPT comes and it ruins everything. So while AI is very important for you in terms of cybersecurity and other things, don't let your brain cells die. The final slide for the night is all about cybersecurity, but not cybersecurity in terms of technical skills. These are the main skills that are expected to gain in value year on year. Working in a team is heavily underrated. A lot of people say I'm a team player, things like that. But when it comes to cybersecurity and in other areas, candidates who are listening in, your education is very important, but most importantly, the ability to work in the team, work independently, verbal communications, project management, all of these things are the various skills officially that has been given certain percentage weightages for 2026. So ensure that while your cybersecurity knowledge is very strong, you start gaining strength in these areas, because if not, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if people don't want to engage with you, people don't want to work with you, organizations don't want to hire you, it just becomes a paper qualification. So ensure, especially in organizations such as this, and thank you for inviting me today, there are so many things that you can do. There are so many team activities, there are so many, even the campus, the various student activities, all of those things play a part. So always choose an environment that will ensure, number one, they bring the best of breed lecturers and everything else into it, but ensure that you also gain these soft skills. And that is where that experience matters, where you need to pick the right place to follow your education as well as your future journey. Yeah, that's it. More or less done. Are there any questions? I have stuck to the time, Karishma. It is 5 minutes to 8.
There's a few questions in the message inbox. One, Padma Peruma, I think, has asked, does
Okay.
AI hallucination happen in cybersecurity?
So AI hallucination, it all depends on what it is. Now, see that when you look at that entire principle behind it, one is they think that you see this everywhere. The platforms, the data that's processed can happen anywhere. In terms of cybersecurity, what I always say is, even with AI, whatever information that's given, it's a predictive analysis. Okay? Even AI can take a wrong decision, can exaggerate, can expand depending on what it is. So the reality is, while AI is a good platform or a method to move ahead, you need to ensure that there is human interaction. That's why I always tell you that other than for repeated or tasks that don't require a lot of brain power behind it, those will be replaced by AI. But the other areas, you have to ensure that there is some sort of accountability. Otherwise, if everyone has watched Terminator happens because certain governments decide that they will give a AI-based platform, or at least artificial intelligence, the ability to launch missiles. So we watched this movie 30 years ago. My question is it very far-fetched now? It's not. They're integrating AI everywhere. So it could happen. It all depends on how you integrate it and who you have managing it as well. Accountability.
There's another question from Chatra Kotagama. Can AI be used to enhance cybersecurity?
AI can be used to enhance cybersecurity, Chaturus. So the main thing is, as I said, while there is a negative perspective to AI, and I'm sorry if I sound negative throughout this, that's not what I meant, but the first part of that presentation, you can shorten your workloads. Now, for an example, I'll just move back very slowly. This is how you can use it, because now all of these things are manually done at the moment, from ongoing learning to discovering new threats, processing vast volumes of data. AI can definitely help, yeah, integrate all of that information and ensure that your entire platform is strengthened. So, Chatura, to answer your question in a nutshell, depending on how you use AI, you can use it one to wade through massive amounts of data. Two, you can do predictive analysis to see where your risks lie. And three, you can discover unknown threats just by using that AI capability of fast processing as well as integrating the data that we have for better responses. So absolutely.
Another question would be how can organization detect a breach early before major damage causes?
Right. So my suggestion is a stress test. Organizations don't like doing stress tests in Sri Lanka because if they get stressed, their employees get stressed. And we know for a fact, I hate to say this, IT departments, you can have the best of breed IT departments, but they are always understaffed. They are heavily stressed. I have a lot of respect for them. I know friends who take leave during Christmas and they're not on leave. In the morning, from morning to night, they're praying that the server doesn't crash. So that's the reality of it. If you do stress tests in organization, you bring in third-party organizations, which only the banking, finance sector, and our larger conglomerates can afford. If you can bring in third parties to test your environment in a very secure manner and tell you, okay, this is what was breached, this is what wasn't breached, this is what you can do to fix it. There are lots of organizations out there that do that. So you can strengthen your response by testing what you have in at the moment and having the ability to understand that the gaps that are highlighted is not a reflection against you. It's the fact that they're giving you a way forward to make your life easier by blocking those gaps. So it's called a stress test and a gap analysis. If those two are done, you can strengthen your cybersecurity posture within your own organization.
Moving on to Naveen Naziruddin, he has asked, with AI-driven attacks on the rise, do behavior-based detection engines face scalability issues? How do you mitigate model aging in real-world environments?
Okay. So as you mentioned rightly, with AI attacks on the rise, the behavioral engines are all based on the information that's ingested. I think we had this conversation earlier where I said that your AI engine is as good as the information that's pushed in. Now, scalability is all dependent on computing power as well as the platform that you set this AI platform on. My suggestion in most circumstances is that while you are looking at AI-based attacks increasing, so what do we mean by AI attacks increasing? One, the speed of attack increases. The frequency of attack increases because if you're a normal hacker, you're going to take some time. Here, you're rapidly hit over and over again. It's like heavy artillery hitting a house. What you need to do, especially on behavior-based models, as the real-time learning might not equate to the same speed that you're being attacked on, it's always better to have isolated environments. So what I always say is, even with AI behavioral engines that you're integrating, rather than giving all access passes to those platforms, there should always be a proxy. I remember I mentioned the zero trust approach. The zero trust approach would be that even if we're using behavioral engines, rather than worrying about scalability and how fast we can enhance performance there, you have stop gaps between it. So that let's say if you're passing information or you're passing, you have each segment isolated up to a certain point. So then what happens is even if there's an AI-based attack, they will breach it. Let's say that a breach happens, but that breach is not across the organization. It's not across the border. It's that particular segment. So segmenting it as small as possible, isolating it, and then making sure that these various areas only get the access that they require will safeguard your environment while you practice scalability on the behavioral models, because that's all based on the information that it's ingested. Hope that answers your question.
I'm sorry if I'm reading these names wrong. Rumika, I don't think AI would replace specialized jobs, but entry-level jobs would mostly be done by AI, right? We need more experience to join a job, right? Join a job. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So that was Rumika, is it? Okay, Rumika, it's a yes and no situation. Now, I generally agree with you. I think I'm on your side on that one. But the reality is, now I'll give you an example. Strategists, chief strategy officers, is that what they call it now? Yeah, that's what the Google kids call it. Yeah, chief strategy officers. They are paid millions for strategy. So I'll ask you a simple question. If I can give all of my input for the last 15 years of my company performance, if I can give another 15 years data of all my competitors, and AI can give me strategies based on what they see in the market, it reduces human error, does it not? So then my question arises, yes, that experience matters. But does that experience matter up to that point if an AI engine can do everything at a fraction of the cost of what I'm paying my chief strategy officer who has human errors? if he's having a bad day at home, if he's having a bad period in his life or her life, it all affects it. So I agree with what you're saying, Rumika. As a whole, entry-level jobs will be affected, but I have a feeling with the enhancement of AI and the amount of scalability that we're seeing, it's not very far-fetched that certain high-end jobs will be at risk. Like I told you, strategy risk. The CFO makes financial decisions, correct. But if the strategy part is taken away from the CFO and this AI platform can integrate all of that data and tell you what you need to do they need to be paid as much? Is my question. So it's a very risky, dicey situation. And also, like you said, if AI makes a mistake or it hallucinates or some problem happens, your entire company crashes because you are completely reliant there. There's no human capability. So I think it needs to be integrated. But that's my personal opinion, though. I mean, people can disagree, but that's where I stand on it.
Shapa Gunatilaka has asked, how can we mitigate correct predictions for wrong reasons by an ANN model?
Okay. So sorry, repeat that question again.
How can we mitigate correct predictions for wrong reasons by an ANN model?
So that again is all dependent on the inputs. Now we forget about the various models that we talk about. The bottom line is all of these predictions are done based on the information that we provide. That's why I say I don't believe in full automation. I believe in a hybrid model. Now this hybrid model is where you have people who are paid their worth, sitting in positions where they can also overlook the various predictions and various information that AI brings in. I don't believe in isolated AI environments. I believe in integrated approach. While we think that we can automate a lot of the things that AI does, it has to be integrated with human connection. That's, I think, even what Rumika mentioned earlier, saying that certain jobs won't go away. I don't think that there will ever be a complete replacement because it's foolhardy, as you mentioned in that question. If your predictions are correct, but the reason behind it is incorrect, that can still affect corporate strategy. It can still affect national strategy. It can affect anything. So the reality is that you need to have a mix and match approach between AI and between some sort of monitoring system, human based, that can integrate both together. So that will reduce the risk of computer error and it will also reduce the risk of human error. It will be vice versa.
So are there any more questions in terms of cybersecurity for Mr. Roshan from our team, from our people? Mr. Roshan, sorry, this question was asked earlier. I forgot to ask you. It was, does banks in Sri Lanka have a dedicated cybersecurity team or do they promote careers?
I'm sorry, just explain one more time.
Yes, does banks in Sri Lanka have a dedicated cybersecurity team or do
Yeah.
they promote careers?
No, they do. They do. So all the banks have dedicated cybersecurity teams. It's information security department. They have the different teams. The question that you need to ask is not about the banks. The question that you need to ask is what are they doing with the divisions? So this is not to discourage people. The reality is that a lot of the organizations in Sri Lanka, they can do better. Now, that actually enhances why you should study cybersecurity because I'll explain something to you. Let's say that you learn all the baselines of cybersecurity. You learn it from a good university, you have all the information that you want. Then when you enter these departments, you start seeing the loopholes yourself. But the problem here is the red tape. In banks specifically, there's a traditional hierarchical red tape that you can't move past. But there are plenty of careers available. So if you're looking at, why am I following a cybersecurity degree? What can I do with it? Over the next 10, 15 years, I guarantee you, cybersecurity will be the bread and butter of all the organizations because as the attacks increase, they will not be able to ignore it. So it's always an investment. Now, I did my engineering degree back in 2010, and that engineering degree became an investment. It wasn't a paid qualification. It helped me in various departments from critical thinking to security to IT to everything. In the same way, if you invest in a cybersecurity degree today, it can bring you not only to cybersecurity technical, look at the careers, cybersecurity management, cybersecurity strategy, cybersecurity development, cybersecurity evaluation. You can be an auditor. There are so many areas. There are more than 15, 20 areas that you can excel in, and banks have specialized departments for it. Even cybersecurity, you might have audit divisions separately there just for cybersecurity in the future. So I always say studying now makes sense because I feel over the next decade, the importance will increase and it won't plateau. It will stagnate at some point in 30, 40 years. But the reality is it's on a growth cycle. So it's always good to follow a certification and a qualification in cybersecurity taught at the right place with the right people at the right time. And now is the time.
I think with that, the question session has ended because the
Nice.
questions have stopped. But I think I have a question to answer from one of the participants. Like you said, the careers in cybersecurity,
Correct.
they have to start right now, yeah?
Of
So
course, of course.
Pasinder has asked, I'm after O-levels, I'm looking to study more about cybersecurity. Are there any courses available at CIC? So yeah, we do have courses at CIC in the sense we start from to give a little background about what Colombo International Campus is for you, Pasinder, and also the participants. Yes, so we are a campus, we are from actually Colombo International Campus by name, and we are located in Borella, Daddi Senanayake Mawatha. We are in words, if I'm to put it, we are dedicated to providing a comprehensive and cutting-edge education with the best facilities in Sri Lanka to meet international standards. So from moving on from education in terms of academics and also facilities in the sense to from gym to a rooftop sports area, we have all that with us just to make studying hassle-free. So whether you're a student after O-levels or A-levels or also a seasoned professional looking to upskill or gain a new qualification, we offer a diverse range of programs starting from after O-levels, from foundation courses in IT and business to our high national diplomas, which is the 2 years of a degree in high demand fields like cybersecurity for IT, AI, and network engineering in terms of IT. So yes, cybersecurity is offered at our campus where you can join to upskill your CV, or if you're after O-levels or A-levels, you can still join with us and get to know more about these programs. Like Mr. Roshan said, today is the day for you all to start. You all can inquire today directly through our number. I will let you all know the number. So all the business programs we have from foundation business to HNDs in small business management, entrepreneurship, and accounting and finance, and more. We also have a specialized certificate course, which is a 4-month certificate course for AI. Anyone who is interested here can join, maybe to upskill, maybe to get a hint of what this AI world is about. Even if you're a professional or even a student, I think that's amazing because AI is actually moving, yeah, Mr. Roshan? Like
Definitely.
is evolving a lot.
Anyway, I think what you said was correct, Karishma. When it comes to cybersecurity, without that knowledge, or at least the basic working knowledge of AI, it's going to be very difficult because you're going to be left behind. That is definitely something you need to pick up on. Definitely.
So this course would do exactly that for you. Would give you a hint about what AI is and would also give you more qualifications into whatever. If it's cybersecurity, amazing. You have a background in AI with a certificate offered by Colombo International Campus. So it is a qualification which you can carry forward in your life. It's not just the qualification, actually. It's I think it's a need these days with the evolving world for you all to have knowledge about AI. So yeah, that is that. If we do have industry placements for students, Vidya, if you are a student here, we actually find industry placements for you all if you want to work somewhere in the related fields. Is there any more questions? Yes. Can I go? I think this question is for you, Mr. Roshan. Khalif, can a hacker make all the banking system balance zero at a national level?
I don't know, Khalid, can they? Okay, so it's like this. Okay, so I'll give you a non-committed answer because this falls under a very gray domain. If you get into the right system in a bank, you can play around with those numbers. I'll give you a very interesting audit example. A few years ago, there had been a co-banking upgrade at a particular bank. With the co-banking upgrade, there had been a small virus injected into it where a few cents were shaved off every transaction for about 7 months, if I recall correctly, amounting to the tune of 45 million rupees. Now, none of that were detected because let's say if you're banking and you lose 10 cents, are you going to call the bank over 10 cents? I'm not going to call the bank over 10 cents. So I don't know if you can zero the balances, but you can play around with the numbers. And this is why I say national security is important because we call this a non-invading approach in cybersecurity. If I want to disrupt a country, I'll attack energy. I'll shut down their power grid. Okay. I'll go into the hospitals. I'll shut down the critical services. And then after that, I'll get into the banking, finance, and the stock exchange, and I'll shut that down as well. If I shut these three things down, do I need to invade a country? I don't have to invade a country. All I have to do is give it a little bit, and the country will collapse. And you know how it works, right? Humans are only controller only there because there are legal norms. We have seen when society breaks down, that's when you start questioning whether it's worthwhile. So cybersecurity, yes, you can theoretically zero the balances depending on the bank that you attack, but I wouldn't know. So yeah.
Also, ethical hacking is
Mhm.
what we are promoting, nothing
Oh,
illegal.
yeah. That's the gray area. So, ethical hackers learn how to ethically hack. But to be fair, it's the same skill set that you require for unethical hacking as well. But ethical hacking is very important. I think that's something that Karishma mentioned. Because with ethical hacking, number one, I'll give it to you on two perspectives. I know that we're run over time. On an educational perspective, now, if students are listening in, ethical hacking is something that will take you to a many industries. It will open many doors, and most importantly, it will also affect your bank balance very heavily because it has to be both sides, right? Ethical hacking is very important. Companies hire good ethical hackers for big values and big contracts because it is that important to an organization. So ethical hacking is something that's very important. Number two, with AI, ethical hacking, cybersecurity, it's always the balanced approach. Once you learn all of these things, you go into an organization, why would they choose someone else? Because you're always looking at differentiating yourself, right? So if you can get all of these skills and learn all of this and walk into society with these educational qualifications with real world experience, I guarantee you, if you have 10 people there, you will be in the top 2 to 3, and then the rest is on you. Soft skills is the last part.
So I think you got the answer. I can't remember his name. Yeah. So
Yeah.
with that, we come to the end of our session. If there is anything you want to reach out Mr. Rushan for, he's available in most of the platforms. And if you want to reach him through us, also it is a possibility. So again, thank you, Mr. Roshan, for giving us time amidst your busy schedule. We know how busy you are. Thank you so much again on behalf of the
problem.
audience as well and on behalf of the campus. So also we have another webinar. So this is like a weekly webinar we always carry for our students and for our audience to be aware about all these glamorized topics which are everyone's questions these days. So next week we have this transfer pathway webinar on 18th. Y'all can join if you are interested. It's on our pages. So if you feel that you're in a rush to get qualified or to learn more or to get just another qualification, your journey starts with us. So feel free to visit our campus. Again, it's at Borella, Dudley Senanayak Mawatha. Our contact number is 070785555, and it's also in the chat box. I will put it again right now. So thank you for all as well, the audience as well. Thank you all of y'all for joining us today. I hope you found this webinar insightful and also answered all your exciting and inspiring questions. So remember, in cybersecurity, as Mr. Roshan said, being reactive is no longer an option. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and most importantly, be the defense, not the target. Thank you for joining us. Have a safe and secure day. Good evening.
Good evening. Take care.